If you were to ask most people what the main content of World of Warcraft is, you'd likely get one of three answers: raids, dungeons, or PvP. And those are the aspects of the game that get you the best loot and fill up your great vault, but they aren't everything WoW has to offer. There is single player content, of course. Quest campaigns, dailies, and Torghast can keep you occupied for quite a while. If you want to have more long-term goals, you can aim to do achievements like Lore Master or complete older expansion content. Pet battles are another area of content that have a small but devoted fanbase. People come up with teams for pet battle dungeons, fight each other, and figure out which pets are the best. But today, and for something new on the channel, I'm going to be talking about another aspect of WoW. It's the only aspect that splits up realms into types anymore, and it affects every single one of us to some extent. We're going to be talking about roleplay, and why it has the potential to be the best thing in World of Warcraft. Just to quickly recap what roleplay is, it is playing your character, like an actor playing a role. Many of you will be familiar with the concept from tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons or Call of Cthulhu. When you speak to other players, you talk as your character. When you make a move, you act how your character would. You aren't defined by your class's mechanics, but by what your character would and could do. Would they diplomatically talk their way through the conflict, or charge in with an axe over their head? Aside from spontaneous casual roleplay, you may also have a DM for specific events, much like you would in D&D. The DM will craft the story for you, filling it with fantastical creatures, interesting scenarios, and threats to overcome, adventures to really sink your teeth into. For most players, hearing about roleplay leaves a bad first impression. Goldshire Inn is the first thing most people associate with it, and as those are the salacious stories that easily spread around. However, that impression is not much different from claiming that all serious raiders spend 12 hours a day hammering their heads against bosses, or that everyone who PvPs is that undead rogue who waits until you're in combat. To some extent, we are all roleplayers, and most of us make roleplay based choices. But even if you pick your race, your covenant, or your class based on what is considered the best, there are still things that you pick entirely based on your personal preference. You can choose a name, your character's appearance, your title, and your transmog. You may not even think about them as roleplay choices, but that's what it boils down to. Maybe you've even thought up a backstory for your character, despite never having roleplayed with other people. Being invested in your character means you keep playing. And while the gear you've looted, the collectibles you've gathered, or the achievements you've earned certainly represent the bulk of the investment, roleplayers have something else on top of that. They treasure the character themselves and the history that comes with it. Just like how you would get invested in your favourite character in a TV show, or hold your breath reading about someone's fate in a book, roleplayers will do the same with their characters. Those past actions and achievements may not show up in the armory, but they are remembered just as fondly. Roleplay doesn't rely on Warcraft systems. It doesn't matter if you don't like the specs that's currently meta, or if you didn't like Azerite or randomly dropped legendaries. If you are doing PvE or PvP, you have to use those systems, whether you like them or not, or accept that you are going to be doing worse for yourself. You can be disappointed that your spec lags behind, or that one talent you enjoy is not viable. For roleplaying, you make your own system. With the group that you are playing with, you create what is best for you. You may not even need a system, just a relaxing drink in a tavern watching people fall from the mage tower because they don't have flying yet. If you do want a system, add-ons have got you covered. For rolling, if the simple /roll does not suffice, there is the Dice Master add-on. Aside from letting you roll other types of dice, this add-on also allows the display of NPCs, health bars, buffs, and many other functionalities usually reserved for virtual tabletop engines. For your own character, Total Roleplay 3 lets you add surnames, titles, and detail your appearance beyond what Warcraft's limited customization allows. That is not to say that if you roleplay you can ignore the issues that you may find in the game. Just like most people, roleplayers aren't limited to one aspect of the game. They are just as likely to raid, do dungeons, or do arenas as everyone else. It's quite amazing how often people assume that just because you're in a role-playing guild, you don't know about how to play your own class. There is a number of role-playing guilds that push for mythic progress, just as there will be people in mythic raiding guilds who enjoy some roleplay on the side. We are now almost at the part where I tell you why it can have the potential to be the best content in the game. But first, we're going to talk about one other area it excels in, the multiplayer. Social interactions are extremely important in MMOs. They are hard to artificially set up, but the benefits that they can provide define the genre. Roleplay is entirely built on social interactions. You need other players, and all you can do is interact with those players. In tabletop role-playing games you may have house rules for your group, but in WoW roleplay the entire thing is house ruled. Roleplay in WoW really only has one set of rules to follow, that being WoW's code of conduct and terms and conditions. Many communities may say that you can't roleplay as Anduin's brother, but the only thing preventing that scenario is the community making rules for itself. Just like in D&D, nothing is stopping you if your party wants to be the mightiest of heroes, or if you want to play a meek halfling who took a wrong turn into adventure. If you find some people happy to accept your character idea and play with you, then go for it. It's all about collaboration, finding a group of people who can set their own rules and guidelines together. If it makes you happy, go for it. You can't roleplay the wrong way, only as wrong as the people you choose to play with perceive it. If they think it's wrong, you can find people that don't. Of course, this doesn't happen very often in practice because the community tends to police itself. Whether it's a server's Discord community or guild, the rules and guidelines are made for the benefit of everyone and are designed to be suitable for the majority of play. The structure is there for a reason, but it's a player-made structure. It's not been hard-coded in by the developers. If you want to play with those people, you do as asked. And if you don't like them, you just find a new group to play with. It's no different than not joining a Mythic raiding guild if you don't want to raid Mythic, you just join a normal or heroic guild instead. But the role-playing scene is vast, not necessarily in numbers, but in variety. You have heroes and villains, the noble and the questionable, mighty mages and meek villagers. But it goes even beyond this. You have stories looking at the darkest thing the world has to offer, and you have knights sat in the tavern making jokes. There are intricately crafted stories that you can affect. You can become part of the world and shape the narrative. You can suffer through the worst losses and succeed against the greatest odds. The sheer variety in the communities and the stories outdoes anything else in the game. There will be a group of people perfect for you. The benefit of social play is obvious in other forms of the game as well. All those people that complain about pugs or having to randomly queue could avoid the majority of the issues if they just played with a group. Playing with others that you enjoy the content with will make the game better. Lots of people complained about Battle for Azeroth, but to me, it wasn't that much of an issue. I could look past the flaws as long as I played with my friends. Roleplay's reliance on social play has its flaws. You can just go do a solo Torghast run or queue up for something early in the morning while no one else is awake, but you can't roleplay by yourself. That's just called writing. When others are around, however, roleplay's potential is unlimited. And that leads to the biggest reason why roleplay has the most potential. And it involves the plumber. User-created content is not a new thing in games. Over the last 5 years, it has really taken off. I am absolutely terrible at 2D platforming games, and yet I've enjoyed making levels in Mario Maker. User-created content existed before this, of course. People have modded or made ROM hacks in the past. Nowadays, there are games exclusively designed to let you design them. They give you the blueprints and the tools, and your imagination takes the wheel. Roleplay isn't the only aspect of this in WoW. There is speedrunning, or you can make crazy challenges for yourselves or a team of friends. But roleplaying allows for unlimited potential of user-created content. There is only so much you can speedrun, only so many ways you can get from 1 to 60, but in roleplay, the options are unlimited. In roleplay, your character can exist before they're level 1 in Northshire. They can fight well mounted, they can wear as many enchanted rings as they want, or lose everyone they cared about. They can be a true hero, or a flawed renegade bent on revenge. DMs can create unique worlds and boss fights, heart-wrenching stories, or humorous moments. It's like a play in your head, or part of a book. It's a story and a chance to make memories. Roleplay is only limited by your imagination, and of those taking part. I could list everything that you can be in roleplay, but not in the usual game structure, from race class combos to classes that are unplayable, but that video would take longer than the time it takes to level to 60 in Classic. Warcraft developers are going to have crazy ideas about cool things they want to put into the game that don't end up making it in. As a role player, you didn't add them to the story. There was a boss design workshop at a past BlizzCon where they were discussing ideas for the first boss of Shrine of the Storms. Some of those ideas sounded better than what we'd got in the final dungeon, ideas that for whatever reason did not work out. In roleplay, you can execute those things. You can have the water rise up as the fight goes on, drowning your heroes as the elements shift from water to void. WoW is an MMORPG. RP is in the name, and while most players don't even consider it, or have the wrong impression, or think it's a joke, those that partake in it are the ones who can get the most enjoyment out of the game. No matter whether the game reaches new heights or stops receiving content in the future, until the servers go down, roleplay will keep happening. During the end of expansion content droughts, roleplayers are the ones that don't get bored, and that's a great feeling to have. Roleplay isn't even bound by the expansions or the game mechanics themselves. If you don't want to go to the Shadowlands, you don't even need to buy the most recent expansion. The characters people create will live on, and go on adventures that have potential than even the best raid tier. Thank you very much for watching. While I've enjoyed Shadowlands, some parts of it have certainly been more disheartening than BFA. And yet, thanks to a new role-playing main, some fantastic DMs and their stories, and of course a great guild, I've invested more time in roleplay again, and I'm loving it. I love talking about the theory of roleplay, so along with the other content on this channel, I'm going to start going over that here too. I think roleplay is underrepresented in the WoW community, so this little channel will start doing its part.